Hello, and welcome to another edition of Believers Fellowship Bible Time. I'm glad that you're able to watch this, and I trust that you're finding these to be helpful. Today, we begin a new book, the book of Numbers. As we read through the Old Testament in our daily Bible reading, we come to the book of Numbers today. And just to let you know, Numbers, there are some important numbers in the month of March, important to me anyways. It was in March of 1974 that I was saved. So March is an anniversary month for me every year. 46 years now that I've been walking with the Lord, and it was on March 30th of 1991 that I preached my first sermon as a pastor. The little church I pastored in California, my first Sunday was on March 30th, which is the day I'm recording this. You're going to see it on the 31st, but on March 30th, 1991, that was Easter Sunday on that year, and that was my first Sunday as a pastor preaching on Easter Sunday. So there's some numbers related to March that are important to me, but has nothing to do with what we're going to look at here in the book of Numbers, which, by the way, is not the greatest greatest title for this book. It's the Greek title that comes out of the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament. And it's because there's a census at the beginning, there's a census near the end, there's a lot of numbers. That's it. Not very creative, but it does lead to some creative subtitles. Years ago, I taught the book of Numbers to the Bereans at our church, the Bereans group, many years ago. And the subtitle was Numbers, Living a Life That Counts. I was a lot younger when I did that. Numbers is just not the greatest title. The Hebrew title, it comes from the word wilderness there in the first verse, because that's where it happens, in the wilderness. This is the time of Israel in the wilderness. That's what we're going to be looking at. That's where it happened. And in fact, the whole book is written as a warning. It's a warning about disbelief and disobedience. 1 Corinthians 10:6 says these things were written for our example, that we would learn from this. And in our study of the book of Hebrews, starting in chapter 3, verse 7 and going through chapter 4, verse 13, is a big warning section in the book of Hebrews, and it's pointing back to the days of the numbers. And so that's what this book is all about. It's a warning about disbelief and disobedience. And the kind of the outline of the book would be the first 10 chapters talk about order. You could use the word order because people are getting in order and getting ready to go into the promised land. But then something happens, and chapters 11 through 25 you could call disorder, because that's where they get all out of control. And because of that, what should have been an 11-day trip turned into a 39-year wandering in the wilderness. You get to chapter 26 through the end of the book, you could call that reorder, because now the next generation is getting organized and ready to go into the promised land. And so that's what it's about. And you might notice right off the very first verse, a very common phrase that you're going to see throughout the book of Numbers: the Lord spoke to Moses. And so this book is written by Moses. It's what the Lord gave Moses, and Moses communicated to the people. That talks about the inspiration of this book. That talks about the authority of this book. And actually, the people got off to a good start because at verse 54 there of chapter 1, it says, "Thus did the people of Israel. They did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses." Sounds good. The end of chapter 2, same thing. "Thus did the people of Israel according to all that the Lord commanded Moses." So it gets off to a good start. They're getting organized. They're getting ready to enter into the land. And what you see in chapter 1 is the numbering of the people, the numbering of the men over the age of 20 who can go to war. And there's 603,550 of them. And so that tells you there's over 2 million people total in this traveling caravan here. And chapter 2 is all about how they are to camp, how they're to arrange their camp with the tabernacle in the middle, and how the tribes are to organize themselves around that, and then how they are to march, the order that they are to march in. And so it's getting everything all ready, getting everything all organized, ready for them to go into the land. Now, one of the things I'm wanting to do as we go through these together is to help you learn how to read the Bible, that struck me because just even yesterday, as I'm riding home from church, I'm listening to the radio, and I heard somebody who has some credibility in a lot of ways, but they're talking about how, in your spiritual life, you run into those dry times, and it's like when you're in the wilderness, like when the people of Israel were in the wilderness. But isn't it encouraging to know that God's with you even there in the good times, like the Exodus, but he's also there with you in the wilderness? Well, that's not exactly what is being taught here in the book of Numbers. It's about them being disciplined, about them being chastised. It's about hundreds of thousands of them dying in the wilderness because of their disbelief and disobedience. So you can't just take something like this and make it out to, hey, God's with you when you're in the wilderness of your Christian life. That's not what this book is talking about. And a lot of people, they'll read a book like this, and it's like Moses and the people of Israel didn't even exist. It's like, this is all just for me. That's not right either. It was written by Moses to the people of Israel, and there was a purpose behind it. And you've got to understand that original purpose if you're going to really understand what it's saying at all. And that's what I'm hoping for you to see. There's a way to read a book. So that by the end of it, you can say, yes, I know what the book of Numbers is all about. This is how it's laid out. This is what the purpose of it is. And this is how it unfolds. That's the way you need to be able to do it. So what's with all these numbers? What's up here in chapters 1 and chapter 2? Well, let me just give you some things here to think about. Now, one of the things, you can ask a lot of questions as you're reading through the Bible. And one of the questions is, what does this tell me about God? What is God doing? What is this showing me about God? Well, there's a number of things here that you could look at. First of all, this is a huge number of people that are going to be traveling through the wilderness. And so you could call that a verification, because God made a promise to Abraham that, hey, out of you, Abraham, I'm going to make a great nation. Well, here it is. Here it is. All of these people that multiplied so prolifically in Egypt that made the Pharaoh afraid of them. And here they are coming out, this huge number of people coming to the land that God promised to Abraham. So it's verification. That's important. That tells you something about God that you can hold on to. Secondly, you could talk about identification. God's counting every single person here. Every single person here matters to him. He's wanting to know, who are all these people? Who are all these men 20 years and up? Let's find all of them. Let's identify all of them. And let's identify a head of each tribe. And let's look at all the Levites too, from that are included in this group as well. And so, Psalm 80 verse 1 says that God is the shepherd of Israel. The shepherd knows his sheep. And so he's counting these people. He's numbering his army. He's looking over his flock. God's a shepherd, and he's a shepherd that you can look to, who takes care of his sheep. That's something you can get out of these first two chapters. And then there's an awful lot of organization going on here, isn't there? There's verification, identification, and organization. This is how you're going to camp. This is how you're going to march. This is the way it's going to be. And why is that important? Well, they're preparing to go to war. Yeah, they're going to war. They got to be organized to go to war. Let's identify the men that are going to fight, and let's talk about how we're going to go about doing this. They're organized. That tells you something about the Lord too. It's not just a spontaneous, how are you feeling kind of a deal. It says in 1 Corinthians 14:40 that everything in the church is to be done decently in order. Yeah, because that's a reflection of God. And you see that here, even in how he's organizing the people. And in 1 Corinthians 14:43, it says that God is not the author of confusion. And so you see that being played out here in the book of Numbers when they're getting all organized and getting ready for war. and they're going into war. Christians are in a war also. We're in a very real war, a very real spiritual war, and we need to be organized if we're going to be effective in that war. Which means we need to have good leadership, and people need to follow the leadership. The leadership needs to listen to what God says and needs to tell the people, hey, this is what the Bible says, this is what God says, and the people need to be all in, all on board with that, like the people of Israel were at the very beginning. So there's just some things to get us going here in the book of Numbers, some things you can start charting along as we work our way through this book, and you're going to learn some amazing things about God, and you're going to see God in all of his holiness and his power as we go through the book of Numbers together. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'll see you tomorrow for more Bible time.